Hi everyone, welcome back to another Diablo Immortal video. So, I feel like I need a change for my PvP build. I mean, at the moment I'm using the Corpse Lance Dark Curse build with Bone Spirits, lots of continuous damage over time, and Wraithform as well. Now I've been using this for quite a long time, and it is a decent build. I know quite a lot of people stick to this kind of build. It is nice, but I'm kind of missing something, which is summons, and it's one of the main reasons I did decide to play a Necromancer in the first place as well. I love having summons with me, and you know, initially summons weren't that great in Battleground and any PvP environment. They just die far too quickly, but obviously recently we've had essences where we've got untargetable mages and untargetable skeletons that can do some decent damage and also fear enemies as well. We've also got the Golem build. So Golem, you can now be encased within and actually, you know, play as the Golem and run around and do Hulk smash on enemies, which is really good fun. So there's a lot of variation that we can do now with summons in PvP, and I think I fancy a change, and I want to sort of not delete this build. I'll still keep this build, but I want to try out a different type of summon build and see how I get on. So yeah, let's see how I get on with another build. I have one already put together which I have used in Shadow War on Saturday, so I have used it and I got on quite nicely with it actually. I did actually really enjoy using it. So I'm going to transition over to that build and sort of use it more often and just see how I get on. So this video I'm basically going to show the build that I'm going to use and the essences and everything, and then try it out in Battleground and see how we get on. So I've decided to change to a build which relies on a lot of fear as well as takes in summons and is fun to play in Battleground, which is the most important thing, and I think I'll have a lot more fun with this new build. Right, so I'm going to switch over to the build now. It's this one here called Scarecrow, just because of the amount of fear it causes on enemies and the damage it deals to enemies once that fear has been placed. Obviously a nod to the Batman villain Scarecrow, I thought I'd give it a fun name. So the skills which I use for this build are Soulfire, Wraithform, Skeletal Mage, Command Skeletons, and Bone Spirit. So let's go ahead and activate this build. And let's have a look at the essences in more detail. So it should be pretty easy for anyone to put this build together and try it out. Give it a go, it's super fun. For the chest piece, I've gone with Adjudicator's Cage. This is where Bone Spirit's damage is increased by 66.5% to feared enemies, and the Bone Spirit's damage is increased by 10% because it's awakened. Now you'll see the other essences this pairs with nicely, but once we do cast fear on enemies, I get that 66.5% increased damage and the additional 10%, so it's a huge amount of damage once Bone Spirits is cast on enemies once they're feared. Let's take a look at the helm. So I'm taking in two of the summons which are untargetable, so some of the newer essences that have been introduced in the game. For Necromancer, Command Skeletons and Mages have untargetable essences now, and I'm going to be using them too in this build in a PvP environment. So the first one here is Stern Guidance. This is the Spectral Warriors. Command Skeletons now summons untargetable Spectral Warriors that can be ordered to rush to a location and explode, dealing damage and fearing enemies. So that's our first source of fear there. Additionally, Spectral Warriors will sacrifice themselves, exploding on enemies that are feared. Command Skeletons damage increased by 18% and another 10% increased damage. So this is really good. They're very fast. You can command them at the enemy location, maybe where the idols are or where some enemies are spawning, or if someone's running away. You can explode at the enemy and you can fear them as well. It's quite a nice one that pairs along nicely with Adjudicator's Cage. Now let's have a look at the legs. So for legs we've got Banshee. Banshee obviously is the one that pairs with Wraithform. So Wraithform now causes enemies you touch to flee in fear and damages them. That's our second source of fear with this build. Wraithform damage increased by 18% and you get an additional 10% for the awakened slot. So obviously Wraithform is being used in a couple of ways for this build. First, it's to do the damage and fear on enemies, and the second is for survivability. just to get out the way if you are in a sticky situation, or if you do get stunned or something. As soon as you're back up, you can sort of get out the way with Wraith Form. So that's why I wanted to have Wraith Form in this build, because I'm not taking in borrowed time. So Wraith Form will be my survivability skill, and I can also use it to fear enemies as well. Now the next one is the shoulders. Now this one was really interesting. There's a few options that you can pick for the shoulders, and I've decided to go ahead with Festering Wounds. This is where skeletal mage damage is increased by 15.2%, and I'll show you which mage I'm going to go with a bit later on, but you probably had an idea from earlier on. It's going to be the untargetable mages. So this is where the mage damage is increased by 15.2% for each harmful effect the enemy suffers from, up to a maximum of 60.8%. That's quite a lot. And skeletal mage cooldowns decreased by 10% as well. So I'm also mixing in a lot of harmful effects with this build, along with fear and the damage. I've got additional harmful effects as well, which I'll show, a lot of them coming from the legendary gems and one from the set items as well. Now, I did mention there's a few options that you can go with. There's Executive Discount, there's Sinoi's Anointing, Depletion and Renewal. I had a test with about 4 or 5 of the different essences, so I'll show you which other ones that you can go ahead and pick. So if we scroll down here at the other mage ones, I didn't test with Scarecrow because there's a lot of better ones that you can go with. So Sinoi's Anointing, this is where skeletal mage just gets an additional mage. Now this actually had the weakest damage when I did test against the other essences in this shoulder slot. So this one had a cross for me. I think I got around 62.8, 62.3 million damage total over a minute with this one, and I got much higher numbers for the other essences, and the DPS was a lot lower with this one as well. And the other one we can have a look at is Executive Discontent. This is where you increase all damage you deal by 9.5% for each skeletal mage you have active. Now this is a really, really good one. So this is one I originally went with before I switched to Festering Wounds. I went with Festering Wounds just because it matched with the other harmful effects that I have going on. But if not, definitely go with Executive Discontent, because this one is really good, and I got really, really good damage numbers with this one. So this is the other option to go with. The other one is, if I scroll down here, Depletion and Renewal. This one is where the skeletal mage grows in size and strength. I didn't get that great damage numbers with this one when I was testing. And the other one is Cutthroat's Arch as well. This one didn't have very good damage either. So either go with, as I said, Executive Discontent, or stick to Festering Wounds if you have a lot of harmful effects going on in your build from legendary gems and set items. So these are the two to pick from. For my build, I've gone and stuck with Festering Wounds because it gave me the best results when I was testing on the training dummy. So that's for the shoulders. That's the trickiest one because there's quite a few options you could actually pick there for the mages. For the weapon, I did try a couple of options here. I tried the Bone Spear poison damage on this slot, and then I tested with Pierce Hammer where I've got the Command Skeleton's damage increase. I was actually getting better results sticking to Soulfire and then having Pierce Hammer on this slot, so I've decided to stick to this one. So this is where Command Skeleton's damage is increased by 19%. And that obviously pairs together nicely with Stern Guidance. So when the Command Skeletons do go up against those enemies, I just get some additional damage, and you get 19%, which is quite decent. The Summon's life increase by 10% is a bit annoying because obviously they're untargetable, so they're not going to be able to be killed. It would have been nice if we had a cooldown or additional damage here, but we do get the additional 20% pretty much damage from the skeletal champions. So as I said, the other one I did actually play around with was actually Bone Spirit's damage. That's one as well. I tried Bone Spirit's damage and Blightmore, but I decided to stick to Pierce Hammer after playing around with the essences. But have a go yourself as well. For me, Pierce Hammer just works better for my build. For the second slot for the weapon, I went with Communal Rib. So this is the third source of fear, the third and final source of fear with this build. You can see why I've called it Scarecrow. There's fear just coming from everywhere. Bone Spirits has a 20% chance to inflict fear on enemies lasting 2.4 seconds. And obviously you can't fear the same target more often than once every 4 seconds, but once you have feared that target, hopefully it's either game over or they sort of get away. Bone Spirit's damage has an additional 10%. So you can see I've got a lot of Bone Spirit's damage coming from a few areas as well, which is quite nice, and I've got a chance to do extra fear with Bone Spirit. So I quite like this one because it is a fear build. I just wanted as many sources of fear coming in as I could. So now I'll show you which mage and Bone Spirit essence that I went with. So for the shield, Scattered Light, as you guessed, which is the Spectral Mage. I love this essence. This one and Black Wall are my two favourites. Skeletal Mage now summons untargetable Spectral Mages that cast Hungering Soulfire enemies. After being struck by a total loss of control effect, a Spectral Mage can sacrifice itself to remove the effect. So this is really useful in a PvP environment. Additionally, Spectral Mages will be summoned passively while you are in combat, which is also good. So if you're busy doing anything else, you're just going to get a passive mage there. And Skeletal Mage damage increased by 10%, and you get a 10% cooldown reduction as well. So there's lots of stuff going on here, and the fact that they're untargetable means that the other players are not going to be able to take them down very easily, like what happened with the early mage and skeleton essences, which is why people stop sort of taking them into Battleground, because they just die too quickly. This just means they hang around for longer and they're actually useful in PvP. So that's the summon essences I've gone with. Spectral Mage and Spectral Warriors, a nice pairing. And the last one is the shield, Drifter's Fair. I really like this one. I did one video where I was testing some Bone Spirit essences, and the damage with this particular essence was greater than the other spirit essences in this particular slot, and it's one that I decided to stick with after some testing and playing around. So this is the Wandering Wraith, where you get that giant spirits, the skulls that sort of wander around slowly and just continuously damage enemies. They're quite annoying when they sort of latch onto you. Bone Spirits now unleashes a powerful skull that wanders randomly through nearby enemies, dealing damage as it passes through them. Maximum 2 charges, and Bone Spirit's damage increased by 18% and another 10% damage increase. So you can see I've got lots of spirits damage going on here. So once again, that's Stern Guidance, Adjudicator's Cage, Festering Wounds, Proximal Fear, Pierce Hammer, Scattered Light, Communal Rib, and Drifter's Fair. That's what I've stuck with. It works quite nicely. So you have your mages up, you got your skeletons where, you know, you got this big circle that you can choose where you want to throw them, and they'll go and explode at that area. Then you've got your spirits that will slowly wander and attack enemies, and obviously when those enemies are feared, you're going to get a decent amount of damage from these spirits. And then I've got Wraithform just to do additional fear and get out of the way as well. Soulfire, just dealing some additional damage when I can, so obviously that's going to trigger a lot of the gems and the other effects that I've got going on. So this is my build that I'm going in with and trying. Also, I have got a friend that has tried a similar build to this. I think it was very similar to what I've got here. Maybe they've got some different legendary gems, and maybe they switched a couple of essences around. I think they had Executive Discontent, but it's Jekaris from Ancient Lodge, who's a friend of mine from there, and he's actually given a thumbs up for this build as well, because he's tried it out himself, and I tried it out, tweaked it around a bit, made it my own, sort of fit with my personal preference, and it works really nicely for me. So I'm going to stick with this build for quite a while and just see how I get on. I'm having more fun with this build just because I'm able to take in summons, and as I said, it's the main reason I am a Necromancer. I like having those summons around with me, so at least I can actually make use of them in PvP. Let's take a look at some of the other things like my legendary gems and sort of Paragon and set items, so you can see where the other harmful effects are coming in from. So for the set items, I've gone in with 2 pieces of Feasting Baron's Pack, so increase the duration of my harmful effects by 30%. So that's going to pair nicely with the harmful effects that are going on with my gems. And 2 pieces of Banquet of Eyes, a really nice set item for Necromancer. So the damage dealt to enemies suffering from continual damage effects increased by 15%. And then I've got some additional continuous damage coming in from 4 pieces of Angments, where I've got Ignite status increased by 30% and 15% chance of attaching that Ignite status on an enemy. So that's going to deal some continual burn damage to enemies. and this pairs in nicely with Roiling Consequence as well. So I've got lots of burn damage coming in from here, critical hit chances going up as well. I get that Roiling Rage and increased damage to burning enemies. I've got Blood-Soaked Jade, obviously a favourite by most people, so it's a gem which is definitely worth getting. Phoenix Ashes is my main survivability gem in this build. It does save me quite a lot because obviously I don't have Borrowed Time and I don't actually have a Saviour pet. I still need to get one. So I've got Gladiator and Phoenix Ashes and kind of Wraithform, which are going to help me out when I am in a sticky situation for this build. Chipper Stoneflesh. So I've got this one. I've had this for a long time. This was actually the very first 5 out of 5 star legendary gem that I got in the game in the early stages, and I've just stuck with it. So when you cause an enemy total loss of control, you inflict explosive curse on them. I've decided to just stick with this just because it goes nicely with this sort of fear, harmful build that I've got going on. It would be nice if I had a bit more total loss of control going on with this build. Now I've got Starfire Shard, obviously a nice one in PvP, and I've got some additional burn damage going on there. Gloom Cask, I like this because it just fits in with the Necromancer theme quite nicely, and it just improves my primary attack. Now the last 2 gems I've got are 2-star legendary gems. I've got more continual damage coming in from Viper's Bite, and I basically just kept with Morn Skull since it came in the game because I did get it to rank 10, and it's just one that I like to just keep hold of. But I got some more continual damage that happened with the Vile Spirits on Morn Skull. I may swap this out for Colossus Engine when that comes in the game and keep Viper's Bite, but I'll see how I get on when that gem actually comes in the game, and if I do get enough copies of it, obviously. For Paragon, just old school Gladiator, to be honest. I'm just keeping it simple with this one. So I have Uncontrollable, Grizzled Veteran, To the Victor, Overpower, Cheat Death, and for the legendary I've just got Roaring Strike. So I think these pair together quite nicely, and it's just a nice one to use in PvP. It just kind of kept it safe. Obviously not the best for obviously dealing some additional damage and stuff, but it just helps me for some survivability and in a battleground environment. If I head over to the blacksmith, just one thing I wanted to show there. So the other thing which I will show is I'll do a battleground match at the end of this, which I'll just attach. I'll do an attacking one, I'll do a defensive one just to show both.
What do you need, friend?
When it comes to Curse Purifying, I've just gone in with 2 pieces of Detested, so I create that dark void underneath enemies. I've got 4 pieces of Atrophied. When I deal continuous damage to an enemy, I'll get that dark field appearing under them, and also I'll get the movement speed of enemies being reduced by 60% for 1.5 seconds, which is quite nice in a PvP environment. And the other 2 I've got is lashed 2 pieces as well, so I get those crackling whips. So that's basically what I've got for the Curse Purifying. For Reforges, I've tried to get as much damage to enemies suffering loss of control increase as I could. So I've got 5% here, 5% here. Damage to players increased as well. Duration of beneficial effects, and yeah, some more loss of control, fear resistance, stun resistance. So just basically try to get as many bonus attributes as I could, which are going to help me in a PvP environment. And I've tried to look out for loss of control and sort of bump that up as much as I could. So that's kind of sort of common sense for a PvP Reforged sets. One thing I did want to show is at the training dummy. So if I head over to the training dummy, I just wanted to show a difference between this build and the Dark Curse Corpse Lance build I have. Okay, so we're just at the training dummy. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to attack the training dummy for a minute with this build. I'm not going to use Wraithform, I'm just going to use the skeletons and bone spirits. We'll get a bit of a breakdown, and we'll compare this to the Dark Curse Corpse Lance build that I was using, just to show that it's not too far off in terms of total damage. And obviously I'm not getting the fear from the Wraithform here, so all I'm showing is the summons, primary attack and spirits, but just to get a bit of an idea. with a comparison. There's lots of harmful effects going on at the training dummy. It'd be nice if that sort of stayed on, but it's sort of going away. There we go. Oh no, it goes away every time I hit a skill. That's a bit annoying. But lots of harmful effects and continual damage happening on that training dummy. And you can see the fear symbol above the training dummy's head as well. So we'll stop this in a few seconds. There we go. Roughly 73 million. Breakdown at 21% with the Soulfire. All mages have done quite well with 41.6%. The skeletons are obviously just doing some explosion, but are also helping with fear. Bone spirits, you can see the gems 13.6%. Let's replace this build with the previous one I had. Okay, switch back to this one. And let's just do the same thing again. I'm not going to hit Ray Form. I'm just going to use the others. So I'm gathering the corpses with Corpse Lance, dealing that spinning bone damage. I've got the same skill for Bone Spirits, which is doing that wandering spirit that's attacking. This is really fast damage over this build. And I'm just going to do this for 1 minute again. I did take the Scarecrow build into Shadow War, which I will link in the description as well, just so you can see how I got on there. That was quite fun. Okay, I'll be stopping the timer soon. And there we go. Just under 70 million. You know, it was very, very close. But as you can see, both builds are not very far off. So I thought I'd just show that as well. Breakdown. Got Soulfire doing 16.3. Look at Corpse Lance doing 49.3% there. Dark Curse isn't doing too much. Spirits is doing 11.6. And Legendary Gems kicking in at 11.1%. So that's just a quick test of both of them. Let me just go back to the Scarecrow build. And I just want to hit one last time on the training dummy. And yeah, it's a really fun build. I've taken it into PvP, I don't know, 6-7 times or so far, and I've been really enjoying it. I've been having fun with it. It's quite nice to sort of stay back a little bit as well and just sort of fire the summons. And then if you do want to get stuck in, obviously you can with Brave Form and with Bone Spirits that are going to latch onto enemies when you're close up to them. But the Bone Spirits do actually wander off towards enemies, which is quite nice. So you don't have to be too close to the enemies. And obviously Brave Form is nice for some survivability and to get out of the way. The gems pairing up quite nicely with this build as well. And obviously it's nice seeing all the harmful effects kick in with the legendary gems that I have for this build. I haven't got Pain Clasp actually equipped. That's within a gem resonance, but that's a good one to use as well. But I've got Pain Clasp rank 10 within one of my other gems, but you know, Pain Clasp would obviously help a lot more with the harmful effects. So as you can see, another a minute test there. Paused it, 75.3 million, and here is the breakdown of the skills. So you can see the damage for this build is pretty decent as well. So that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to show the new PvP build which I'm changing over to. I fancied a bit of a change and I wanted to have a bit more fun with a build, and I think this is the one. Now obviously the next thing I can try is obviously going in with a Hulk build with the Golem, being encased that Golem and trying to see what that's like. I've heard that's quite effective in the new Battleground maps that's coming out as well. But for now, I just want to stick to this build where I've got Bone Spirits, the Mages, Skeletons and Wraith Form with Soulfire. I also prefer the ultimate for Soulfire as well. That's another reason why I've stuck to Soulfire. I like the Hungering Moon ultimate. The charm, I'm kind of working on a charm for this one as well. So I've got Skeletal Mage, Soulfire, Bone Spirits, Wraith Form. I'm just looking out for Command Skeletons, which I can add into that last slot. So this is just going to give me some additional damage increase for this build as well. So that's pretty much it. try it out. I just wanted to make a quick video just so it's easy for someone to just quickly pick those essences and try it out themselves and see how they get on with the build. And it's a thumbs up from me. I'm really enjoying this. What I'll do after this video is I'm just going to show 2 Battleground matches. I'll do one defense and one attack just to show how the build is kind of used in that PvP environment. And I'll also link in the description a Shadow War where I use this build. That's pretty much it for this video. Hope you enjoyed that. Try this build out. Let me know what you think. Also, if you think of anything that I could do to improve this, tweak it, let me know in the comment section. But I did a lot of tests with the shoulder essences and the weapon essences as well. I did a bit of playing around at the training dummy. I had some numbers written down, and what I've got worked quite nicely for me and the setup which I have, and I find this build really fun, so I'm going to be sticking to this for a while. Give it a try, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye. So this is the defensive match which I'm going to show to begin with using this build. And before the match starts, I'm just going to show the essences are definitely the ones which I showed in this video. So hope you enjoy watching this match play out using this Scarecrow build. I'm just making sure I do get that fear triggered on the enemies and then just try and do as much damage as I can really. But I'm trying to be cautious with the positioning. There are times where I did get a bit too stuck in, but generally I'm trying to be wary of where I do position myself and trying not to get too stuck in. But the kills are coming in quite nicely with this particular match. I wasn't actually expecting to get this many kill streaks in this match, but I guess I got kind of lucky with the matchmaking, and the build is doing well as well. So quite happy with that, and I just continue to do what I planned. So sort of keeping the right distance, keeping those summons up, using Ray Form for fear as well as spirits, and just doing as much damage with the primary attacks to trigger the gems as well, and sort of keeping that momentum up. And at this point in the match, the enemy were kind of stuck in that spawn area and not able to get to the idols. So nothing too exciting happened here, and we were kind of just defending this area to stop the enemy players from getting to the idols. So what I'll do is I'll probably just jump forward a little bit towards the end of this match. Okay, so 1 minute left to go. The enemy team is still struggling at this area, but I managed to get a 10 kill streak in at this point, so I was quite happy with that. And now it's just a case of kind of letting that timer run out until we can end this match. And that was it for that match. So a victory. Obviously I couldn't control the matchmaking, but you had a good idea of how the build worked and how I used it. I did end up getting MVP as well, so that was pretty cool. And then this is an attacking match which I'll let play out.
Let's take them.
I am injured. My life fades. More time. Ability must recharge. More time.
And this is where we ended up having a bit of an epic battle at the Ancient Heart that went on for a lot longer than I expected, but it eventually led us to victory. And hopefully with these two matches you can see how the build works, and you just kind of have to keep your distance at times and try not to rambo in too much like I might have done at times. But overall I didn't do too bad. I did get MVP as well, which is quite nice, and demonstrated how the fear effect works on the enemies and how you can take the enemies out once you do have that fear applied, and how you can use the summon as well. So really fun build to use. I'm going to stick to using this for a while. Give it a go, see what you think as well if you haven't used this already. So hope you enjoyed watching those matches.